Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Today's video is going to be part 2 of my January reading wrap up, and I read 9 books in total. I've got 4 to talk about today. All in, I am super pleased with how the year started off. I will link the part 1 video if you guys haven't had a chance to read or watch that one yet and talk about all the books that I read. But let's just get into how I finished out the month of January. The first book I want to talk about is one that I read for purely sentimental reasons / I needed a little bit of a palate cleanser, and it is Lois Duncan's Down a Dark Hall. And I talked about this all the way back in my first newbie tag video, which is the fact that Lois Duncan was a huge influence on me as a reader as a teen, and she is one of the first mystery thriller writers that I have ever read. And this is a book that I had not read as a teenager, so I read I Know What You Did Last Summer and Stranger with My Face and a couple others, and I wound up picking this one up at Book Outlet, I want to say in 2018 even maybe, and I saw that this actually got turned into a movie with Uma Thurman that came out, and I have it on my DVR because it was on one of those free movie weekend things that happened over the holidays, and I decided because I am a purist, I'm going to read the book before I watch the movie. And this is a boarding school haunted ghost story mystery type of a book, and this originally came out in 1974, and I think that it's very obvious that this is a book that came out a long time ago. So while they did make an effort to sort of rebrand it and update it in 2011 with some cell phones and Wi-Fi and that kind of a thing, I believe the core of the story is exactly the same. And I haven't watched the movie yet, but I will be curious to see what changes, if any, have happened since then. But basically this is about 4 girls who are kind of the first in class to this new boarding school up in New England. And I don't even know if they specify where it is, but it's called Blackwood. And it is creepy as all get out when our first girl gets there, and her name is Kit, and we're kind of seeing everything through Kit's eyes. And Kit was super excited to go to this school. She was going to go with her best friend from back in New York, but her best friend didn't get in. And then Kit is super bummed that she has to go to this school, but her mom still makes her go. And from the get-go, Kit knows something just is not right. And this school is run by the very mysterious Madame Duray, who has had similar schools in, I want to say, London and in Paris. And there's a couple faculty members and a couple staffers, and Madame Duray's son, Jules, who, I don't know if he's supposed to be 16 or 18 years old. And then it's Kit and 3 other girls. And like I said, very early on, they figure out something is not quite right about this place. And back in the day, I filmed a lot of videos today. Back in the day, there was a horrible fire at Blackwood, and it used to be a famous house of someone else, and the man who lived there, his whole family died, and he just insisted that they just were haunting the place. So it's ghosty, creepy, but what is a hard sell on this book, I think, in this day, is that for some mysterious reason, cell phones don't work and the Wi-Fi is not on, and the only way the girls can communicate with the outside world is by writing letters that they give to a faculty member, and he drives into town and he mails them. But really early on, the letters they're getting back from people make it sound like they haven't heard from any of the girls, but the girls are all writing letters. So they know that this faculty is messing with them, but they really don't do anything about it. So I feel that's not overly realistic. And I realize, it's a haunting ghost story, so it's not realistic, period. But I think if they had kept it set in the 70s, maybe this would have worked a little bit better, or if they tried to somehow up the ante in the retelling, or the refresh of the book, but I don't even know that they needed to refresh the book. But I think it read genuinely very young to me. This is one of those books that I feel is keenly targeted towards a young audience and is not a universal read in that it appeals to young adults and adults. And it might be a factor of the time it was written in. It might be a factor of the fact that I'm not a young adult and I have read far creepier, scarier, weirder books than this. And it might just be a factor of today's young adults are far more sophisticated than they were when I was a young adult, and I would imagine than they were maybe in 1974. So I think this was a cutting edge book at the time, It's not a bad book by any stretch. I think it's perfectly fine. It just wasn't like a wow book for me. And I think a lot of that has to do with my age, the time it was written, the people it was targeted towards. So I am a fan, like I said, of Lois Duncan. I am making it my mission to reread some of her books this year. So I enjoyed it for what it was, and I'm looking forward to seeing the movie to see how that stands up to it all. So that is book number 1 that I read in the second half of January. The next book I read was actually a reread for me, and I actually did the audiobook of it this time around, and it's You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. And this book came out like 5 years ago, and I read it probably 5 years ago when it first came out, and I wrote all over it. So just to give you a hint, the pink tabs are from this time around. Can you see how many there are? And then the first time I read this book, I underlined things in red, and the second time I underlined things in blue. So you'll see some things, this is gonna blurry, were underlined twice. A lot of times I found the same passages. I dog-eared it one of the times I read it, so there's like dog-eared pages. So there's years and years of love over this book. What's it all about, you're asking? So this is nonfiction, self-help-ish, and this is how to stop doubting your greatness and start living an awesome life. I am in desperate need of repeated kicks in the butt to get things going. I am committed to 2020 being the year of the awesome life, and I found such relatability in this. Again, inspiration, great pearls of wisdom, great action items. She narrates the book herself, which is just dynamite. She's got a great literal voice. She has a great writing voice. This is in the vein of Girl Stop Apologizing by Rachel Hollis. I was in it. I was fist pumping. Like I said, I was underlining. I'm taking notes. I am putting things into action. So this book is broken down into 5 different sections, and she covers everything from kind of how you got this way to embracing your inner badass, loving the one you're with. She talks about meditation. She talks about law of attraction. She talks about gratitude. She talks about how to get over it, how to get over your crap, basically. She talks about how to kick some ass. She talks about money, procrastination, finding sort of your inner universe, whatever it is that you connect with, and taking action steps and kind of forgiving yourself for past mistakes, but sort of how to focus on being the best you. How to love yourself is a huge theme. At the end of every chapter, she talks about it. She talks about your passion trumping your fear, owning your stories. I talked about forgiveness. There's so many insanely great tips in this book. I am referencing it consistently. I will continue to reference it. This is a book that has not gone back on the shelf since I took it down. There is just so much to learn, I think, from here, and so many, in some cases, just gentle reminders and like the aha moment, things that, not that it made it okay, but just to sort of see yourself reflected back to yourself, for me, is really helpful. Someone who's been there, someone who gets it, someone who's gotten through it. She has since written more books. I am looking forward to reading them. I remember reading this the first time, and that was the first time I had tried meditation. And I remember literally crying one of the first times I was doing the meditation, because it was like this weird cathartic experience that I have never had before. And now I am a hardcore Headspace, I was gonna say head case, I'm that too, Headspace devotee. I do it every single day. I think there's just a lot of great nuggets in here, like I said, and it's achievable, it's measurable, they are small steps. It is not these insane milestones where you go from like 0 to 100 in 2 days. And it talks about how, progress becomes addictive, and when you start to see the change happening, you want to be doing it more. But it's a very down to earth, it's very relatable. It's like I talked about, stay sexy and don't get murdered. It's very much like sitting in the kitchen with your best friend, having a conversation about life, learning from her mistakes, and someone who's got your back and who's telling you that you are a badass and is giving you that confidence and that assurance that you need. I just love it. I can't recommend it enough. I think you could read it. I think you could listen to it. I think you could do a little bit of both. I think you cannot go wrong. A line that I underlined here is, on the other side of your fear is your freedom. It talks about confronting your fear. It's just so many great things. Indecision is torture. Just on and on and on and on and on. Could do an entire video on this book. Let me know if you would like me to do that. But I just think it's a great inspiration, and no better way to start off the new year than with just some incredible advice and some just completely relatable, wonderful nuggets of truth to help us make this our best year yet. The next book I read is one of the books that I got for Christmas that I was so excited about, and I'm so happy I read it, and it is The Escape Room by Megan Goldin. And this book is already reflecting. This book, you guys, was crazy. And this is about 4 Wall Streeters who are just like these ruthless, horrible human beings. And they are so uber competitive. They will stop at nothing to trample over like everyone to get ahead, including each other. And they all get this email that they are required to show up at this abandoned building for this mandatory team building event. And it's an escape room, and they all are loaded into an elevator, and they have to solve the clues to get out. And these lovely, lovely people, so it's Vincent, Jules, Sylvie, and Sam, figure out pretty early on, and we as the reader know very early on, that it is welcome to the escape room. Your goal is simple, to get out alive. And we see this book in 2 different timelines. So we see it in the elevator, and then we flash back in time and we get a perspective from Sarah Hall, who is one of their colleagues. And we start to kind of see how these 4 people wound up in the elevator together. We start to understand their history, and the clues that they are getting in the elevator are intensely personal and have to do with some messed up things that these people did. So I will not tell you more than this because it is a mystery thriller and you need to just read it and watch it unfold. I will say this was a thoroughly enjoyable reading experience for me. There were some things that I figured out. There were some things where I kind of knew maybe where it was going. There were some things that I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. There were some pleasant surprises in the sense that, like, I was surprised to see things happen. And I was ultimately satisfied with the ending of this. There is darkness to this. There is just, this makes you never want to get involved with anyone who works on Wall Street. So if you are someone who works on Wall Street, I am so, so sorry, but this does not paint a pretty picture. I just have to say, I would highly recommend this book. I thought it was terrific. I did see that Megan Goldin has another book coming out later this year, so I'm excited about that. This book came out, I think it came out in 2019. I feel like I was very late to the game on it. 2018 it came out, and in Australia, and came out 2019 in the US. So just great, just great. If you're curious about it, if you want kind of a fun ride, thriller, mystery, psychological suspense, this is definitely a good one to pick up. The last book I read in January, and I finished it on January 31st, A, because I was no way going to let the month end without me finishing this book, and B, I 100% needed to know what the ending was all about, because I'm the last person on the planet to read Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. And this is there's 2 camps. There's the people who love it and there's the people who hate it. And I have to say, you guys, I really enjoyed this book and I did not hate the ending. I get why people hate the ending. I did not hate the ending. I will admit that obviously me going into this, I knew it was all about the ending. So I was waiting for it. I was looking for it. I was trying to figure things out. I knew there was going to be like one whopper of a twist coming. And there were some things that I figured out. There were some suspicions that I had that were wrong. There were some suspicions that I had that wound up being a little bit right. And I know this book came out so long ago, so I don't know that anybody's interested in a dedicated video on this book, but if you are, I'm happy to do one and talk spoilers galore, because I feel like this is one of those books that it's very hard to talk about without giving anything away. But this is a book about this twisted friendship, I guess I would say. So Louise is a single mom. She's a 6-year-old son. Her ex-husband has moved on to somebody new, and she's on Struggle Street. So she's a receptionist at this medical practice. She basically kind of like hangs out at home. She takes care of her son. She smokes too much. She probably drinks a bit too much wine. She's got one best friend, Sophie. And one night she is at a bar. Sophie winds up not showing up, and Louise winds up meeting a man, and he is just sort of like everything. sparks all the love in her again, all the tingles, all the feels. They have great conversation. They have great chemistry. They share a wonderful kiss at the end of the night. And she's like so hopeful about what could be. And then she goes to work the next day and in he walks with his wife. He's the new doctor at the practice who's just moved to town. And Louise basically wants to crawl up and die. And Louise still works at this place. So she's connected to David. They acknowledge that they had that mistake of a kiss. He's super embarrassed, obviously, because he's a married man. But then Louise also goes ahead and befriends his wife, Adele, and has a friendship with her. And she basically gets sucked into this crazy couple's life and things happen. And I really enjoyed Sarah Pinborough's writing. I thought there were some great twists. There was a lot of like that feeling that I love to get where you're off balance and you're not sure what's happening and you're getting little nuggets of things and you know something's coming, like you know there's a twist, you know things aren't quite computing, you can't quite figure out all the pieces of the puzzle. I was flipping compulsively. I needed to know what was going to happen next. I needed to know what choices our characters are going to make. There were moments I was yelling at our characters for doing things. There were moments where you're just like, this is not going to end well, but at the same time, you completely understand in some ways why they're doing what they're doing, and in other times you cannot for the life of you figure out why they're doing what they're doing. But I really enjoyed it. I did. I like I said, I was not mad about the ending of it. I had some suspicions about something. I love a dark twist. So yeah, I'm not mad about it. I'm not. I get why people do, because I do feel like there's an element of like the rug getting pulled out from under you, and I get the feeling of like you go from like here to here with not a lot of connection in between. And I know that that's vague, and maybe if you read it, you understand what I'm saying. But again, I enjoyed her writing. I enjoyed the weaving of the story. I did like the characters. I know it wasn't the most like the deepest of characters in some ways. I mean, there was a lot with Louise where I was just like, girl, what are you doing? But at the same time, like, she's supposed to be a little bit lost, so you get it. I will say, I thoroughly despise the cover of this book. I mean, anyone else, I'm sorry to the person who made the cover of this book, but I feel like there could be so many better covers out there for this one. This eye creeps me out like crazy. But I am happy to pick up more Sarah Pinborough. This book was one of the books on my Tackling My Backlist. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it for you guys. But I made a pact with myself that I will not pick up any new books by any authors if I have unread books of theirs on my shelf. So that's one of the reasons why I read this. But also, I do feel like I was the last person on the planet to read it. And I needed to know what it was all about. And I really enjoyed it. So happy I read it. I'm 100% keeping it. I dog-eared a whole bunch of pages. I think there was so much great writing in here. Writer hat on. I think there were a lot of really good lessons to learn about how to write a good psychological thriller. So all in, I really enjoyed this book. I don't have anything bad to say as far as the things that other people hate about this book. So I'm in. I needed to sit with it for a couple of days, but I'm all in. I thought it was great. I'm so pleased with how my reading has started for 2020. I am glad that I'm doing a little self-help, a little nonfiction, some mysteries, chipping away at things on the shelf. Projects are underway, like all good things. All good juju is happening right now. Let me know what you guys read this month. If you have a favorite book or a standout book, or if you read like a super hyped book and you were the last person on the planet to read it, let me know if you've got one of those going also. But I'm just feeling really good about what I've read. I'm looking forward to continuing to chip away at my backlist. I made it through all of January. I didn't buy a book, so I did my project. I'm gonna keep it going for a little while. I feel like anytime I do this, you really start to appreciate what you've got and what you don't need. And I'm just gonna save it for something special when I finally break my fast. But thank you guys so much for watching today, for hanging out, for spending part of your day with me. If you're new here and you're not already subscribed, definitely do that. I do new videos 2 or 3 times a week. So if you hit that button and the bell, you'll find out when the next video is coming. So have a great rest of your day, everybody. Again, thanks for spending part of it with me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.